Hey folks, good afternoon. You're all very welcome. Thank you for your participation today on a very lovely spring day. My name is Tom Collins. I'm course director for the Professional Diploma in Contemporary Taxation. I'm also director of the National Centre for Taxation Studies here in UL. I've been involved in taxation for over 40 years, between private practice with PwC, in Limerick, Dublin, New Zealand for 2 years, and Deloitte in Limerick for 9 years. I absolutely love taxation because taxation is just constantly changing. If you look over the last 2 weeks alone, all the topics of discussion amongst people are tariffs, pharmaceutical companies leaving, maybe not leaving, the cost of exit taxes, Ireland being labelled a tax scam by the Commerce Secretary in the States, the fallout of a Coca-Cola transfer pricing case in the US, Chelsea claiming R&D tax credit relief. Who would believe that? Being an Arsenal fan, I'm celebrating their win last night against Real Madrid. I'm sure they did a lot of R&D, judging by our 3-0 win last night. I doubt there are too many Real Madrid fans in the audience, but if there are any Spurs fans, I genuinely hope you were watching. So in this session, you'll be glad to hear this is not a formal presentation. I won't be presenting any slide pack, but I will be sending a copy of the slide pack with some further information on the programme, as well as a copy of this webinar to you by Friday. I'm joined on this call by my colleagues Kieran Gallery, Paddy Buckley and Martin Cuneen, who delivered 3 of the modules in addition to myself, and 2 current students on the programme, Bridget O'Leary and Mark Frisby, each of which have a very different background in taxation, and they'll tell you their story and how they have found the programme to date. So what's the programme for? The programme is for people who are currently working in taxation, whether in private sector, public sector, private practice, who are looking for upskilling in relation to particularly international tax, but also importantly, upskilling in relation to reading, interpreting legislation. Combined with that, we have a module in relation to data analysis for taxation purposes, which is a bespoke module for this programme, taking account of the backgrounds of your good selves. We also have a module which features on a number of other postgraduate programs: risk ethics, governance, and artificial intelligence. Each of the module leaders will speak to you shortly. And I suppose when you look at taxation, I literally just came off a phone call 5 minutes ago from someone who had a problem with revised entrepreneurship relief. A client of his had a venture capitalist who had invested funds, and he was concerned that he had fallen below the definition of 51% subsidiary. I was able to answer only the question in 2 minutes. I said, what does the legislation say? When you look at the legislation, what the legislation says is that a 51% subsidiary is a subsidiary, a shareholding of more than 50%. So in his case, a 50.1% definition was satisfied. And it just, in a very simple way, the importance of reading legislation and being able to navigate yourself around legislation, which is a skill that Kieran in particular will focus on. In terms of entry requirements, what we're looking for are candidates with a level 8 honours degree with a 2 grade, or RPL. RPL is looks at your relevant professional experience, learning experience, which could be through formal or informal learnings, plus an accredited tax qualification. I know a number of you on the programme or on this call today have the DIATA certificate qualification from the University of Limerick, which is run in partnership with the Revenue. That would be regarded as an accredited tax qualification combined with your experience working in Revenue. And I'm sure that's a query that many of you had in the back of your mind. As I said, I'm not going to kill you with a slide deck. We will give you a copy of the slide deck with further information, some video and links to the UL website on Friday. The programme itself, you have a choice. You can do the full programme, which is 4 modules delivered sequentially. So the first module is Revenue Law and Negotiations, which runs from early September to around the end of October. Immediately after that, the data analysis for, or data and analytics for taxation will be delivered, which will bring you up to early in December. You have a break at that stage and come back to us in the end of January, where I'll be delivering the applied international tax law for about 8 weeks. There's then a little bit more of a break up until May, where Martin Cunneen will be delivering risk ethics, governance, and artificial intelligence. So it's reasonably well spread out, delivered sequentially, which takes away the pressure of managing your time over 2 or 3 modules for those of you who've done professional exams in the past or any level 8 or level 7 program. In addition to doing the full program, you have the choice of actually selecting the module or modules on the program and doing what we call stacking of micro-credentials, where you could do 1 module this year, 1 next year, and maybe 2 the following year. And all of the grades will be aggregated in giving you an accredited professional diploma in contemporary taxation. So you can make the program work for you depending on your work balance lifestyle. In addition to those options, you can also use this program to participate in what we call the Masters in 3, where you end up with a Master of Professional Practice. What that entails is, in addition to doing this professional diploma in contemporary taxation, you might look at 2 other professional diplomas that are either delivered by the university here or by another 3rd level institute. And on the successful completion of your 3rd qualification, we would award you a master's in professional practice. So that might be an option for some people. The other thing just to highlight is the funding mechanism. For this year, as in applicants for September 25, we have available for a limited number of 25 HCI funding of 50%. So the fee that you'd look at either for the full program or indeed for one of the modules will be reduced by 50%. Now that funding is available if you participate in the program personally or privately, or if you are partaking in the program as sponsored by your employer. Okay, so both models work. Just as the small aside on that, in relation to the risk analytics or risk ethics, governance, and artificial intelligence, which is delivered by Martin, HCI funding in that case is actually up to 80%. Okay, but we limit the amount of micro-credentials taking that particular module to 3, okay, because that module is delivered across a number of other programs. So I'll be handing you over to each of the faculty members in a few moments, who will talk about the module, the form of delivery and assessment, and then I'll hand you over to the 2 students, Bridget O'Leary and Mark Frisby. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to, and I'll ask the faculty to present in the same sequence that they deliver the modules during the program. So starting with Kieran Gallery, who will talk to you about revenue law and negotiations. Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks very much, Tom, and good afternoon to everybody. So I just want to give a very brief overview of what it is that we do in the revenue law and negotiations module. In essence, what we're looking at is to try and get an appreciation, first off, of the structure and the content of tax legislation. The idea behind this is that we can then build on that to successfully ensure that we are correctly interpreting the legislation, which is of vital importance for any tax professional. From a practical perspective, what that really means is we are going to be spending a lot of time looking at this lovely red book here, the Direct Taxes Acts, because it's going to be very, very important from a short-term perspective that you get comfortable with this book, because you will be using it in the assessments that happen throughout the 8 weeks. More long-term, hopefully by the end of the 8 weeks, you'll appreciate how important it is to your everyday work to ensure that you are interpreting the legislation correctly. In addition, we'll also be looking at some elements of negotiation skills in an effort to help you prepare successfully for the tax appeals process. Now, just to be clear, this isn't a one-stop shop to ensure that you're going to be successful in your negotiations in tax appeals. But hopefully what it will do is it will give you some insight into some of the tools and the skills that you can use in order to be better prepared for the negotiations that happen during the appeals process. In terms of assessment, I will be having weekly assessments, normally from around the second week, and they will be finished off by a capstone project worth about 40% of the final grade, which factors in everything that will have been covered in the previous weeks, both from a revenue law perspective and from a negotiations perspective. So hopefully by the end of it all, you'll come out of it far more comfortable in terms of your negotiation skills and far more comfortable in your use of the Direct Taxes Acts. So that was just a very brief overview. Again, there should be plenty of information up there on our websites with regards to the module itself. But please feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran. I should have said that from the outset. Any questions you might have, you might put into the Q&A box, and we'll try our best to deal with each of those as best as possible. If there are some that we don't get to, we'll deal with it when we're circulating the video on Friday. So I might now hand you over to Paddy Buckley. Paddy?
Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Paddy Buckley. So yes, following on from Kieran, I'd like to, broadly speaking, do the same, which is give you a brief overview of the module and how we will be teaching and assessing it. So, I think it's a fairly self-evident statement to say that, the combination of information technology and modern business practices means that today we have access to enormous amounts of information. Some of that might be qualitative in nature, so things like emails, PowerPoints, reports, etc. But a lot of it is quantitative and numeric in nature, spreadsheets, databases, datasets. In this module, what we will be primarily focusing on is that numeric data. We know it's useful, that it can tell us things about our business and our practice, but the data by itself is limited. What we need is we need to know how to analyze it to pull meaningful knowledge out of it. So in this module, what we want to do is we want to develop your quantitative analytical skills. So what we do is we cover a range of analytical techniques. So for example, regression or perhaps simulation. The idea is to show you how to use them. The focus will be on applying these techniques to business problems and business contexts. Where I can give only a limited explanation of the mathematical theory that underpins a particular technique without damaging your ability to use it, I will be doing that. Instead, what we'll be doing is focusing on using a problem-based learning approach where we will be using business problems and business situations to demonstrate how a technique works. So, for example, to give you an example of this and to illustrate how it will be taught, I might start with a problem. So, for example, this would be a business problem that many of you will be at least familiar with the shape of. Given varying tax regimes, how do I decide what country I should set up a business organization in? Now, we could calculate that by picking a sales figure and calculating which jurisdiction is most advantage for that particular sales figure. But the problem with that is that we get an answer for one particular sales figure. But what happens if the actual sales are higher or lower? What we really want is a way of developing an understanding of what happens across the range of possible outcomes that might happen. To do that, one technique that we can apply is simulation. Now, I can't go into the details of that here, but suffice to say, simulation will allow us to calculate what will happen, not just for one particular scenario or event, but carry out analysis across all of the range of possibilities and say something about that range of possibilities. I haven't gone into the details, but I hope that that example at least demonstrates the philosophy of this module. We start with tax-focused business problems, demonstrate an analytical technique in principle, and then apply that technique to solve the business problem. I hope that this keeps the module grounded and it focuses on developing practical skills that will be useful for you. In this module, we use Excel. That's not because Excel is necessarily the best software package for a particular analytical task. Most of the time it's not. Any individual technique we will look at will have specific packages that can perform it better. However, Excel has two advantages. One, it's like a Swiss Army knife. You can use Excel just to do just about anything. Maybe not as efficiently as a custom tool, but just about anything can be done with Excel. Probably even more importantly, I'm sure I'm speaking to every one of you here when you say you use Excel every day, so that when we're learning about the application of an analytical technique by using Excel to demonstrate it, I'm pretty sure that you'll also be getting the opportunity to learn skills and tips and tricks that will make you better able to use Excel and so positively affect your day-to-day work. One thing I would like to emphasize in this is that we do start from the basics of Excel, and I assume very little prior knowledge of Excel coming in, but we do have to move through that material quite quickly because we need to get on to a stage where we can use Excel to implement specific techniques. There is always, and there was in our previous cohort, a considerable variation in the expertise of people coming into this course. Some people had an awful lot of experience with Excel, some had very little. I'm very conscious of that. And I would hope that I do my best to manage it, and I would hope that I would succeed in that. But I would also acknowledge from the outset that that can be a challenge. And for those of you who might come onto this course and have very little Excel background, I would say it will be a challenge. It will be a challenge that if you embrace, you will learn an awful lot that will be very useful to you, but it can be a challenge. The other thing I would encourage you, and this is the feedback we got from the class this year, was that I know some of you will be looking at doing this course who are working with revenue, and that there is already internal training available in revenue on Excel. And it would be a very good idea for you to engage with that material before you start this module. So you're starting from a higher level of development and skill with Excel. In terms of delivery, the module will be delivered online. So, online teaching, it has its strengths and its weaknesses. But one of the great advantages of on delivery is that we can make it as flexible as possible. I will be offering in-person sessions, and I hope to get to meet you all virtually over the course on a number of occasions. But in order to maximize the flexibility that you guys need, and that is the advantage of online teaching, I will be avoiding scheduling learning as much as possible. The online sessions will be question and answer sessions where I'll answer questions that you have. I'll go through problems on the screen, what have you. But the focus will be on providing you with all of the material that you need online so that you can access it and work through it at your own time and pace. So all of the material will be available online. This includes videos, exercises with video walkthroughs and video solutions, sample exercises with solutions, and other material custom built for the module. One of the things that I would be hoping to build in for next year is more of a focus on looking at the really novel AI tools like ChatGPT and how that stuff can be used to perform analytical tasks. There's also more traditional material available, ebooks and UL library and references online. As you would expect from a module online, the course, the end of term exam will be online. It will probably be separated up into two exam assessments this year. And it will be open book. So the idea will be that you will have access to all your resources and you will be solving the problems. So I think that kind of covered the basics of what I wanted to get through. I hope I didn't take too much time. I hope I took enough time to answer any questions you might have. Obviously, if you have any more for me, please put them into the questions and answers, and I'll answer them as the time is appropriate.
Okay, thanks, Paddy and Kieran. After your Christmas break, you come back in late January and start the Applied International Tax Law. We cover on the module the basics in relation to territoriality rules, residence, source, etc. And then we delve into some of the more complex issues such as double taxation treaties, transfer pricing, interest relief for corporates, BEPS 1 and 2, obviously Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 come into play. We also look in terms of delivery. I suppose each of the four of us have a slightly different nuanced way of delivering. In my case, what I do is I provide you with over the 8 weeks with up to 2.5 hours videos. They're generally released on a Friday afternoon. You would they're recorded lectures. They will also be supplemented by some contemporary tax videos. So, for example, if there was a video on Coca-Cola transfer pricing case, that will be put up. I'll also be giving you some mini case study assignments to do, and we'll come back then on a Thursday. So the Thursday after Friday, we have a live class which typically runs from 6 o'clock to 7:30. In that session, I'll be reviewing the material that you would have looked at in the recorded material, highlighting the key points, going through the case studies, and also I always have about 20 minutes on kind of news and views, what's happening in the world of international tax. So if it was this week, we'll also be talking about tariffs, pharmaceutical industries, the impact of exiting Ireland, etc. I think when I did the program this year, or the module this year, I think Trump's inauguration had just happened. So I think the students in this year, and I'm sure Mark and Bridget will subscribe to this, is that it was virtually a sponsorship by Trump, because every week there was something from Trump in relation to taxation. Each week there will be an assignment which is available online, open book, and we use Brightspace as our virtual learning environment, or VLE. Under the open book, the assessment will be available to you for 36 hours, but once you go into the assessment, the Brightspace will close down after an hour and a half. So you've effectively up to an hour and a half per assessment. It's open book, and by design, so matching what you would do in reality in practice. In addition to the assignments, we have a requirement to do 4 blogs over the course of the module, which is very much open to the students to write on something that has caught their attention over the course of the module in relation to international tax. And those 2 forms of assessment amount to around 70%, and then it will have a capstone end of module essay. I give students this year, I think, up to 12 topics for you to pick one, and that counts for 30%. Some of you I know who've been on the BA program in the past are used to my international tax tome, which has got bigger and bigger because of the nature of international tax. I'm planning this year, based on feedback we got from students, is that by the end of November, to give you a condensed version of that, which would run to 50 or 60 pages. So it's kind of a condensed version of the International Tax Manual, which I would like you to read at your leisure over the Christmas period. The other thing I'd say, just to highlight, and Martin might have a slightly different view on this in terms of hours, but it's worth highlighting that you can expect to be investing up to around 15 hours a week. Now that 15 hours sounds a lot, but that involves looking at the recorded videos, doing assignments, doing the assessments, doing your blogs, doing your essays, and self-directed learning. And for some people, it can be slightly less, but that's typically what you would expect to be investing of your time. So you need to be conscious of that before you make a decision on the program. You will find all of us are very, very helpful in terms of being available and dealing with queries. So you're not, even though it's an online program, I think the live classes, and Mark and Bridget will refer to this in a few moments, are very useful in terms of contacting each other, contacting me, and feeling part of a community as you go through the program. So that's more or less what I want to say for the moment. I'm now going to hand you over to Martin, who will bring you through his module, Risk Ethics, Governance and Artificial Intelligence.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here. So this is a great course, and it's a great collaboration, I think, offering a really timely suite of modules and skills. So I'm going to introduce you to the world of artificial intelligence, and everyone's talking about AI at the moment, but I'm going to give you a kind of short, sweet kind of version of why AI is important to tax professionals, and why it is a tool that you will be presented with and you can leverage in the years ahead. So with that in mind, the module will hopefully empower you with new skills to embrace the power of artificial intelligence. So we will start off with a really nice assignment where you will create a timeline of the history of taxation and technology leading up to AI. And then you will do a short essay around the social importance of taxation and artificial intelligence, which will be interesting. And then you look at some case studies that you will actually write yourselves for your peers, and your peers will analyze these case studies, and I'll help you formulate those case studies. Case study analysis and creation is a really important strategy of learning that's embraced by the Harvard Business School and is seen as a really nice way of engaging your peers and communicating your interesting ideas. You'll find that really good. And then final assignment then is to develop for the first time, a code of conduct for tax professionals using artificial intelligence. And I'm really interested in this, and I'm really fascinated by what you'll come up with. So they're the 4 assignments that you'll be working on. And I'll be there to help you along the way in doing these assignments. And each week we'll have a webinar of around an hour and a half in the evening. For the first part of the module, it'll start off on a Monday to get you all set up and running. And then if need be, we'll change it to maybe midweek. But I also run a coffee meetup session, usually on Friday lunchtimes, and that's a kind of a voluntary thing. So people find it really helpful just to pop in for half an hour or an hour and just to discuss general kind of module research, learning, and activities and discussions. So the module is based around what's called engagement learning, and I try and make it as engaging as possible. I try and stimulate you. I try to provide you with stimulating content, and we talk, we have dialogue, we have discussion, and we engage one another. And we develop ideas and understanding, and we critically analyze both the opportunities of artificial intelligence as well as the risk and ethical questions. And in the EU in particular, we'll be looking at what the EU strategy is on artificial intelligence governance. So we'll spend 1 week actually focusing on the European AI Act. We'll also look a little at the GDPR. But essentially, the module is designed to give you a toolbox of tools that when you're confronted with the opportunity to engage and embrace and use AI, that actually you can make more informed decisions about that adoption of AI. Because as Patrick suggested, ChatGPT is being used all the time by everyone. But do we really understand what ChatGPT is, what benefits it offers, and what risks it introduces? So one of the kind of key things for this module is that it'll give you that better understanding, that know-how, those important kind of critical kind of analytical skills to make more informed decisions around the use of AI. So overall, AI is disrupting our world in every way. It will disrupt the tax profession in many new ways. It will offer opportunities, but it will also offer, introduce those opportunities with some costs, and we have to be aware of those costs. So by the end of the module, and after completing your code of conduct, you'll be, well set on a road to embrace artificial intelligence. I look forward to working with you all, and I'm sure you'll find the module and the course very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Martin. I'd now like to ask Mark Frisby and Bridget O'Leary to have a discussion or to give their views on the course. The backgrounds of Mark and Bridget are really interesting insofar as both work with revenue. Mark is relatively new to the taxes area, is formerly an engineer, whereas Bridget has a number of professional qualifications in both accounting and taxation, including CTA. So their backgrounds and their views on how they found the different modules and the course overall to date will be very interesting. So I might ask Mark maybe to kick off. Mark was also class rep during the year, so Mark would have dealt with various queries and feedback from students as the course went on. So over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Good afternoon, everyone. As Tom said there, I'm from a non-tax background, an engineer. I joined revenue from the private sector back in 2001. Current role is I'm an AO in revenue in the data analytics unit of the High Wealth and Financial Services Division, Anti-Avoidance Branch 1. So obviously drove my choice to pick the course was I wanted, one, to improve my skills in my existing role. And I saw the 2 modules of the data analytics and the AI as being able to do that. And then I also wanted to broaden my tax knowledge, dip my toe in and try and understand some little bit of tax, because I had almost zero tax knowledge, and that'll help my obviously career advancement and professional development also. So I suppose, what did I find most valuable out of the course so far? I think the fact that it was self-directed learning is very important. Everybody is busy. We've busy work lives, we've busy home lives, families and everything else. And committing to a full-time diploma over the course of a year is quite a lot. The fact that all the learning videos get released each week, for each week of the modules, you have at your own pace, you can go through them, you can interrogate them time and time again, make your own notes, go through the mini case studies. I found that very, very good. But also it was really important that we had the live sessions to try and pick up and understand and condense down what might have been a week of very intense knowledge gathering and learning if somebody is not familiar with the particular aspect of one of the modules. But at least on a Thursday, you got to sit down, talk to your peers, talk to the other students, talk to the course leaders, and understand it. So to me, the live sessions were as important as the fact it was self-directed. Great for connecting, obviously, with everyone as well. Specifically, from what I've learned over the first 3 modules, I was lucky enough. I had a very, very good background in Excel, data analysis, part of my role, but also as an engineer, I've been using Excel, maths and statistics all my working life. So I was probably one of the lucky ones on the course that I didn't need to go back and learn the basics. I could take what Paddy was teaching in that module and try and apply it week in, week out. And I particularly found it fascinating, but probably a little bit easier than some of my colleagues. But the first module, not having had any experience, the revenue law module, really opened my eyes as to how you have to go through a very, very precise and critical way of analysing and understanding and interpreting the law. I found that very useful, specifically the fact that Kieran spent a number of weeks going through with anti-avoidance legislation as being the key of what we were looking at. So in my role in the anti-avoidance branch, I really found that very, very good. Also then across the data analytics module and in the international tax modules, the fact that you can build up working Excel sheets for computations of tax, that really helped me understand some of these complex tax issues that I didn't understand maybe through a verbal learning, but actually building up saying, well, this is what has to apply, these are the taxes, and then building yourself an Excel file was very worthwhile. For anybody who's thinking about joining the course for the year coming, what advice would I give you, I suppose? I think everyone should go in with their eyes open. Some of the modules are very, very complex and demand time and effort. And what might be complex for me was simple for others on the class, and vice versa. What was very difficult for some, I found quite easy. But that's because of everyone's different backgrounds. It is going to demand time and effort. You don't put that time and effort in, I don't think you'll come out the other side with your qualification. Tom spoke there to approximately 15 hours a week. I know in the modules where I was weak on the international tax and the revenue law, I was putting in 20 and 25 hours per week. On the other module, the data analytics, I didn't have to put in that time and effort. But Bridget will speak to those who have tax experience and sort of time to come in. But I think you really have to think very carefully. These modules, they run through, what we would typically have, bank holidays, midterms for schools, things like that. You really do need to be sure that you are going to be able to commit the time. And the fact then, I think as well, as we always have spoken amongst ourselves in the classic, the break you get is when it's between modules, not during a module, because every single week there's a constant churn of events. You've got your videos that come out, you've got to watch case studies to work through based on those videos. You then the live sessions to distill down all that information, and then you're straight into, in most weeks, an assignment. which some of those assignments are only worth 5% of that particular module, others go up to 15%. But you still have to put the hour and a half effort in on the assignments, and that happens every week. So it's wash, rinse, repeat. So and again, I think as Paddy alluded to there, definitely if you're working in revenue, on One Learning we have the Excel levels 1, 2, and 3 courses. They're about 2 hours each. If you're not familiar with Excel, or you think you're familiar with Excel, but you don't use the building formulas and stuff like that, well worth doing at least 1 and 2, if not 3, before you start the data analysis module. I suppose to sum it up, we were talking about this before the webinar. Knowing what I know now, would I go do it again? And I suppose the answer is, as difficult as each of the modules have been in instances, I've certainly got enough out of this that I would come back and I'd do this this course again, even knowing what I know now.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. Bridget, I might ask you to.
Yeah, my name is Bridget O'Leary, and I'm an accountant. I was an accountant in the private sector for many years, having completed the CTAs. I joined Revenue in the Collector General's Division in 2016, and I moved to the current division, High Wealth and Financial Services Division, in January 2020, which is a highly tax technical role. What drove me to choose this course? I was largely out of touch really with corporation tax, not working much with it in my current role, and a lot of changes had occurred since I did the CTAs. We were informed about MLIs, etc., that I wouldn't have been that familiar with. I liked the data analytics aspect before I started doing it, really, because I had to call on that division a couple of times within my current role to do work for me, and I just wanted to know where the figures, etc., are coming from, or how are they analysed. And AI is an evolving topic, and our conferences concentrated on it last year. The valuable aspects for me was the practical application, the update on corporation tax area and new ways to approach revenue legislation, much better knowledge of Excel, and I enjoyed the essay writing. I hadn't written essays probably since leaving cert, so it was a big thing for me. And if I was to give advice, a lot of it will cross over with the advice Mark just gave you there on the One Learning resource is invaluable too with this course, because you could do the Excel and all that, but even for some areas in the tax legislation, it can help. There's courses there on capital taxes, etc. The huge advice I give is don't panic, even if you're a bit lost at the start. As the time goes on, it does begin to come together and make a bit more sense. I suppose in Mark and my own situation, it depends too on how well you want to do in the course. There's a big difference between getting with, say, a 40% and a 75%. So like in your aim in joining up the course, it depends on what you want out of it, whether it's that increase in knowledge, whether it is to perform at the top of your game or whatever like that. It's very individual in that regard. But the advice I'd give is start early. If you're writing the essays, if you're researching blogs, when you see tax articles in the news, copy a link maybe down to a Word file so that you have access to it afterwards. Because of our practical application in this course, you'd never know, that could come up, like we'll say, in part in one of the assessments, and you can be lucky enough to have already researched it before starting the assessment, because a lot of it is taken from the current news articles and that. And like Mark, if I was asked, would I do the course again? Yes, I would, because I thoroughly enjoyed the essay part and the researching and that kind of thing. My background being accountant, I thought the data analytics would come somewhat naturally to me, but no, I had an awful lot to learn, and for me that was my nemesis, whereas I found the tax much more straightforward. While I didn't know it all, I could read the legislation and I did understand what I was being told. Thank you very much. Okay,
thanks, Bridget and Mark. I'm I'm going to open up to Q&A now. I know there's a whole series of questions here, which I'll try to go through. Some of them we've probably already answered. Will there be exams sit over the whole course? Yes, I think it's all continuous assessment. Can you complete this course without a degree or any other credit? It depends. That query, if that individual wants to get in contact with me directly, we can have a chat if that's okay. I have a past level 8 degree and completed the ITI taxation course, have worked in revenue for a number of years. Would this suffice? Again, potentially yes. But if you can contact me directly, I'll come back to you with a specific answer. Sorry. Would a passing level 8 combined with the ITI tax and the university diploma and applied tax satisfy the eligibility requirements? Yes. I completed the BA honours in applied taxation. Would this course build on that, or is it more designed for those who haven't completed the degree? Interesting questions. I know from looking at the participants that a number of you have recently done the BA, which for those who aren't in revenue, this was a part of our partnership with revenue. We had a level 8 degree in applied taxation. I would say to you, it does depend. First of all, there's 2 new modules on this. Secondly, Kieran's module is a little bit different insofar as it brings in the negotiations bit. And on international tax, I would say it depends when you did the degree. If you did it in the last 12 months, I'd say probably not. But beyond that, there's been such a sea change in international tax, which have fed into Irish domestic legislation. Certainly, if you did the degree more than probably 3 years ago, I would say yes. I think it's worth considering, because I think you're building on your existing knowledge. Again, I've completed BA with the score building that more designed for those type of side. That's same query. Will there be exams? Okay, we've done that. What would the schedule be? As I mentioned earlier, the schedule broadly, it's aligned with our normal academic year. You start as you would, week 1 in September, early September. Kieran's module will run for 8 weeks. Last year there was a break before Paddy came on, but because of a clashing event, Paddy's module will actually start straight after Kieran's finishes up, and that runs for 5 weeks. So that will bring you up to early December. So you have a longer break over Christmas. Come back in the end of January. My module's for 8 weeks. You'll have a break then to early May for Martin Cunneen's one. So it's staggered a little bit. Will there be exams? We've done that. Is there much difference between this and the DIATA? The DIATA, for those of you who aren't from revenue, is the level 7 qualification that we ran in conjunction with revenue. Yes, considerably different. It's very much an uplift from that. The DIATA is a very broadly based on across all tax heads. The revenue law one will help you to build on that in terms of looking at legislation and becoming increasingly comfortable reading and interpreting legislation. And because at the end of the day, if I was teaching theology in minute, I'd be looking at the Bible every day. Our Bible in the tax world is the big red book, as well as the other books. So there is quite a difference, and certainly worth considering in terms of honing in your skills on revenue law, on international tax, and then having these 2 other modules in analytics and AI. Okay, some of these are, after this program, will I get a certificate? Yes, this program is a level 9 accredited program on the NFQ. So you will get a professional qualification in contemporary taxation. I mentioned earlier that you could build on that, build up your own master's in 3 and come up with a master's in professional practice. I've experienced working taxation department. However, I'm not a qualified accountant. What course do I need to do to start a career in taxation? It depends. Again, if that individual wants to get in contact with me directly, I'll speak to you one-to-one. I need to know a little bit more about your background to give you some guidance on that. think that's it, Keith, for the moment. If people
Tom,
want to ask,
apologies,
yeah.
Tom, just to say there are a few attendees that are asking questions in the chat room as opposed to the questions and answers, if you want to have a look there.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll say the earliest one is just from Elizabeth Lombard. Are all online sessions in the evening time?
Yes, they are, and typically probably between 6 o'clock and 7:30. So of course, some of these questions are repeating. Online sessions in evening time. Yeah. I have a diploma in working or lesson. Can I apply for this? Because I don't have the degree, but I work in it. Let's say it. Yeah, I think. Sorry, the student. I won't obviously say names. I have the diploma in applied taxation and working or lesson revenue. Can I apply for this course? Yes. You'd be an ideal candidate. Does the ITI tax technician course completed fully qualify? Not as such, but again, if you get on to me after this, I can talk to you, because with RPL there's some flexibility depending on the areas you work in. How do we apply for the course and the sponsorship? Once you apply, and I'll be sending you the links on Friday, but you can go on at the moment. Once you apply for the course and you have been accepted, at that stage, our GPS, who are managing the admissions policy and the billing, they will then nominate you for the sponsorship. So you apply first, and then our GPS, which is the centre here in the university, they will then look at the HCI funding. But again, I emphasise there's 25 spots available. It's strictly on a first come, first served basis. So if you are interested and funding is key to you, and indeed to your employer, then the sooner you apply, the better. Exams be online. We can look at that. Is it level 7, level 9 master's level? Yes, it's a level 9 qualification. It's not a master's. A master's would require 90 credits. This has 30 credits. But if you were looking at doing a master's, you could bolt on 2 other professional diplomas and get the master's in 3. Hi, I'm CTA and FCA working revenue. Can I complete the module in data analytics for tax only, and do I get a cert and completion? Yes, you'll get a university certificate if you just do that as a micro credential. Apologies, I should have said I work in revenue 8+ years and completed the ITI tax certificate. Okay, that's again, if that individual could contact me directly after the session, I'll have a word with you. I think that's it as far as I can see. Just check if there's any other in the Q&A.
There's a couple of new ones in the Q&A, Tom.
Yeah,
I don't know if you covered them.
Will you be sending down contact details with email on Friday? Yes, we will. If 1 or 2 modules are undertaken, is there an option to receive a certificate for the modules completed? Yes. If you do 1 or 2 or 3, you get a separate certificate for each module. Now, if then in a couple of years' time you wish to get the broader qualification, you could come back and do that and complete the qualification. We've had a couple of students this year do some of the modules as a micro credential, and one of them, in fact, is now looking to come back to do the full course. Okay, so that's the beauty of the course in a way, and there's a lot of flexibility with regard to addressing work-life balances, etc. Is the course predominantly based on corporation tax or on personal taxation covers? Yeah, so my international tax module is largely corporate tax based. Now, when we do look at double taxation treaties, we do look at some aspects of personal taxes, but it is primarily corporation tax that we look at. Now, Kieran's session in revenue law covers all tax heads. All taxes, both individual and company, from an interpretation and application of legislation. But primarily in my module, it is corporate tax. Okay. If has anyone any other queries?
There's a query there, Tom, just asking if funding is available for taking a module on a micro-credential basis? So
yes, there is. If you take one of the first 3 modules, revenue law negotiations, data analytics, or applied international tax, funding of up to 50% is available. If you take the risk ethics, governance, and artificial intelligence, Martin Cunneen's module, up to 80% HCI funding is available. But note that in relation to the last module, Martin's module, there's only 3 micro-credential places available. Okay, and just to, some of my colleagues just asked me just to emphasize, I suppose the beauty of this course is that it is continuous assessment. It's all open book. Okay, so very aligned to what you would do in practice. So there's no end of semester exams as such. You know, Paddy has 2 assessments over the course of his module. Okay, and I should say also in relation to tools, I should have mentioned on my module, I provide quizzes on about 8 or 9 different subject matters this year, which are a tool for you to, you know, as part of your revision on material covered each week. Okay, I think that's about it. Okay,
there's a comment in there from Barry Sheehan.
Yeah,
Tom, did you cover that?
Yeah. Okay, I'd just like to thank Martin Mark, I should say, and Bridget for making yourself available both on Monday and today. Really appreciate it. I know how busy you are, so that's much appreciated. I also like to thank my colleagues, Martin, Kieran, and Paddy, for your inputs today and over the course of the last year, and Keith for all of your assistance on technology today and over the year in terms of promotion. Your skills are endless, I have to say, and much appreciated. So without further ado, I wish you well in as you are all assessments online. Yes. Yeah. Without further ado, I'd like to wish you all well in your decision-making process. Again, just be mindful of, if you're looking for HCI funding, it is on a strict first come, first served basis. It is available if your employer is sponsoring you. I know if you are a revenue employee, this is one of the approved sponsored programs, so that they are happy to participate on that basis. And also noting that the HCI funding is available to revenue on that basis, because this is a fully accredited program. So I wish you well. Enjoy the lovely day that we have. No doubt Irish weather will be different in 48 hours. And I wish you well, and have a good day. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
very much.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Bye.
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 Thank you.